My mom came to me and she had experienced some health issues and couldn't paint really anymore just due to the toxicity and the materials she was using. And she said to me, she's like, you know what, I can't do the painting anymore, but I think I would be a really good promoter of other artists' work. And she said, what do you think? We start super small and give it a few years and see where it goes.
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This episode is number 136. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Before I get into it, if you could please share this one or any other shows you like, I'd appreciate it. I'm trying to grow this thing. Today's guest, as we're walking up the stairs to record this, I said to her, I'm like, you're on my fridge. So we'll get to that story eventually. So please name and who you are.
Hi, I'm Tamar Zenith, and I am the co-owner and director of Newzones Gallery of Contemporary Art.
Amazing. And we should probably do a shout out to Paul for teeing this up.
Yes. Thank you to Paul Lavoie, who's a very, very close friend, and his birthday today. So happy birthday, Paul. And he put the two of us together.
Which is amazing. So the fridge story is, and even I think I emailed you, I'm like, I feel like our paths have crossed at some point. And so anyways, Jody's asking me, she's like, who's coming on the show? And I said, oh, this person, Tamar. She's like, what? She's like, you guys have met before. I was like, when? She's like, at Corinne and Tom's wedding. I was like, oh my God. And then she walks me to the fridge and she's like, she's on our fridge. I was like, so anyways, I was like, oh, this will be a fun one. Cause you know, like when there's already some sort of like connecting point.
Exactly. Well, I'm just so excited that I actually figured it out. I was on the first try, which is not typical.
Hey, your brain's firing this morning.
Yeah, not really. So it's good.
You've seen a couple of these. You've seen the two Pauls.
Yes.
So you have a loose idea of what's about to happen. So let's take it back. I'd love to take it back as far as you want to go. How you grew up, where you grew up, you know, how your parents inspired you, didn't. We'll talk about early jobs, inspiration, and then we'll kind of weave our way to where you are today. So.
Okay. I guess, I just said to you, I went from age 3 to age 12. I was at the Calgary Jewish Academy. Then I went to WIC. I was one of the early I think we were the third graduating class from WIC. That's West Island College.
Yeah. Where were you born?
I was born in Winnipeg, but I only lasted 4 months.
Oh.
But they do say great minds come from Winnipeg. My dad was finishing law school, and then my parents moved back. I do believe I'm a true Calgarian. I love Calgary, and Calgary has been an amazing city to me in terms of how I grew up. I credit actually how I grew up to a lot of my success in life. My parents, when we were about 6, moved us out to the country, Springbank. In those days, Springbank was not what it is now. Mm-hmm. And my brother and I both played competitive tennis, and my mom was basically an Uber driver. And a lot of my time management and my organizational and type A skills come from that part of my life because my parents weren't the type of parents that would drive back and forth for unnecessary items. So if I forgot it in the morning, then I was not going to have it. And that could be a tennis skirt, a test, anything. Mm-hmm. So really, I feel that growing up out there, there was no cable. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And playing kind of elite sport, you really didn't have the time. So basically it was school and it was playing tennis. And my parents were super young. Yeah. I always like to laugh because when my mom turned 40, she had both of her kids were in university. When I turned 40, I had a 5-year-old. So
they were like really young.
Yeah, early 20s.
Wow.
My dad had just graduated from law school, and my mom was like 22 when she had me.
Wow.
So a very different world. And if my son eventually listens to this, don't get any ideas. And we kind of experienced life through their eyes, really, because as they both started to work, my mom was a teacher, and then she was home with us, and then she went back to art school, which is a whole other story. Yep. But, if they went to New York for the first time, we went to New York for the first time. So it was, we got to do a lot of cool things just because we had young parents who wanted to experience a bit of life. They were not, I feel that I love a beach holiday, and I think it's because I never had any because my parents were always exploring cities. So, and
how'd the sport work into your world? Did it start early? And was it, did you try a bunch of different sports? Or?
Yeah. Well, my brother played hockey. You know, growing up in Springbank, you have to play hockey and figure skate because that's the closest thing to you. So he played hockey, and then I figure skated. If you look at me, you can understand why I'm not a figure skater. And we did everything, but at about age 10 and 11, we kind of zeroed in. I think my parents just... I don't know, for some reason, they thought tennis would be a good sport. And I think we're only 10 months apart. So whatever we did together. Not that we did it together, but we were dropped off at the same time. And so.
Tennis just clicked with you, or what was it?
I think it did. It was a very different sport then also. But I think we both obviously had good hand-eye coordination. We both... I don't know, just kind
worked.
of clicked. And it's interesting being a parent and on the other side and having a small child. And it was the last thing I wanted my son to play. I really believe, and I have two nieces that play super. My brother's raised his kids the exact opposite in terms of his kids have played tennis. And it's a super lonely life being a tennis player. You play your good friends every single weekend at tournaments on the road and random kind of small towns and I always wanted my son to play team sports. So, but
that was a conscious decision, like just
very conscious decision.
Has your son ever like wandered down the path of like rock climbing or something like individual? Or?
No, he's. I think being an only child, he is like such a team sport, rah, loves being with people. So, yeah.
Did you go to school out in Springbank too?
No. So that was another reason. So my parents were leaving the house early in the morning. My dad's office was at Mayfair Place, so very south kind of. And then we would come home late at night. So there was no back and forth in those days. So...
do you remember when like the west side of Calgary stopped at 69th Street?
Oh yeah.
Like
I remember
the
when
bus loop at like Beau Trail?
Yeah, no. When we used to first go out, there wasn't even Old Banff Coach Road. Like it was kind of a dirt road through the TV station. It is. And now like my dentist is up there, who's a really good friend. And like there's a whole world from Mercado to Shoppers to everything you could ever need is out. But when I grew up there was
nothing. Like just the horses. It was literally like acreages and horses. Yeah. Was tennis like a full-time job at a young age? Like was it like a lot of practice, a lot of traveling?
Yeah, it was all I really kind of knew. Yeah. It was because, the world wasn't as sophisticated and you didn't kind of know a lot of other things. And that's what we did. My brother went to boarding school when I was, I think, 13, the same year that I would have transferred to Wick, I think. And so then it was probably a little bit easier on my parents, but that was a long time ago.
Time just whips by.
It does. I always say that like certain days are so long, but the years just seem to, like the fact that I have a 20-year-old and I remember hanging out like with Jody and Corinne and we were 20s. So like, it's just such a weird situation.
I agree.
The creaks and pains in the morning tell the story.
So like junior high school, what's kind of got you interested in back then? Like, what do you...
I always loved magazines, like fashion magazines, architectural magazines, design magazines. So that was kind of my currency. Like as soon as you ended up at an airport, like you bought all these magazines. And my mom, my parents, my mom, as I said, was an artist and she was an abstract expressionist. So
like closet, like on the side, just kind of like...
No. So when she was a teacher, and then when both Zach and I went into grade 1, she was able to go back and finish up a BFA. And she showed all over North America, a little bit in Europe. And that's kind of the precursor to Newzones, which I guess we'll get to. But like the visual, our life was very visual. So like we would always kind of go and see expositions and see different. And then we had a beautiful kind of low slung bungalow. And the reason why we moved out to the country was my dad's a businessman and a lawyer. And I think he was developing a community out there that kind of probably went bankrupt and he was left with a house or two. So that's kind of how we ended up out there. So it was good.
Your mom's creativity. Like,
Yeah, my mom's super creative and super kind of thoughtful on the creative side. Like she's a very kind of highly aesthetic person, very tactile also. Like, I don't know if you've ever met her or seen her, but when she dresses up, like she has all this kind of crazy jewelry and like I'm much more minimal than she is.
She goes for it.
Yeah.
So like the magazines, the art, were you doing like art in junior high school?
I just love beautiful things. I do not have, like when I usually sit and work, I do like stick people. Like that's how I release kind of my energy. I don't have any creative, but I love kind of beauty on all different levels. I actually thought I would end up in the fashion world somehow. I don't know how, but that's kind of what my dream job would have been if you would have asked me in grade 10.
So, which is a good segue. So like coming out of grade 12.
So coming out of grade 12.
Do you have an idea of what the world is or what you want?
No. I knew that I wanted to go to Montreal and to McGill. And that's the only school I applied to. And it's the only place I went to.
And why were you so set on?
I have no idea.
It was just.
I think in those days, I think the lawyers and doctors always went there. And I think that's what my parents wanted from me.
Yeah.
And my grandparents. So I just went there. I had no idea what to expect. I had been to tennis camp out east. So I kind of had a little bit of an idea of like how the East, and we went to Toronto a lot because my parents like the big city. So, but I'd never been to Montreal, and I just loved the old buildings and thought Montreal would be a perfect place for me.
Did you know what you're going to take out there? Or you just
I applied into the business department and I got into business. I knew I'm pretty analytical and I'm not great with writing, so I knew I didn't want to do an arts degree, and I still was kind of toying at that part of my life of going into sciences, but I knew it would be easier just to get into business. So I did that.
Did you have like an idea of like what business would look like? Or
No.
you were just taking this thing kind of fits right now?
Yeah, it just fits right now. And it was, my degree is in marketing and organizational behavior. I have a really hard time managing a staff of 4 or 5, so I don't excel at that. I don't do a lot of marketing anymore. So, but it was, as I say to my son who's going into 3rd year, basically this is a time for you just to have experiences. And, there's, I think, very few people that really know what they want to do so young.
Yeah.
And I was one of them. I didn't know.
Did the creative piece of you, was it still with you as you went to university, or does it kind of get buried for a while?
Well, I think, you express yourself with the creative side. Like I always wore dark colors. I always kind of had when I was at WIC, I credit all those girls walking in the really short skirts because I kind of chopped my kilt at the time. So those are kind of the things that on the creative side that I think influenced me. But no, there was no.
Did you see things differently? Like when you kind of walk around Montreal, were you noticing things that other people weren't noticing, like the architecture or their fashion, or was it just?
I think so. I think that's the beauty. I remember the big department store in Montreal at the time was called Ogilvy's, and Cindy Crawford came on a Saturday to promote her newest perfume. So we all went running, and that was a big high. I loved the old buildings. When I actually got my first apartment, it was really important to me how it looked and what was on the wall, and so
just been there. It's been
yeah,
there.
It's been there.
Yeah,
I kind of did the brownstone thing very early on.
Yeah,
like in 89, 90. We lived on the corner of St. Femian Park in a beautiful kind of 3-floor walk up.
Picturesque.
Yeah, it was.
So when you graduate, do you have any idea like what you want to do or where you?
Well, I was applying for jobs.
And what kind of jobs?
Well,
Sorry, before we go there, were you working at all like through like over all these years, or is it between school and tennis and?
well, tennis. As soon as I got accepted to McGill, I dropped tennis.
Yeah.
I kind of knew that I wouldn't have the time and didn't have the interest. Did I work? I always worked.
Yeah, like random jobs.
Random jobs. And
Yeah.
it's also something at Newzones that I really feel is important. Like if you've had McDonald's training or Starbucks training or any of those types of big corporation type of training and you've lasted like for a few years with it, like that's to me is such a good sign. And less are people kind of, do people have those skills? And basically it's a skill of following policy.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not brain science,
yeah.
but you want to make sure that somebody can understand policy. I had like some weird jobs. I worked as like a care case worker. So I'd almost like a nanny. Like I was hired by the city and I would go into like not functioning people's residence and like sleep and make sure and write a report for like 10 hours. I worked as a hostess. And then as soon as I got to Montreal and I had a credit card, I had to go to work also because I got my first bill. So I was the girl that was in the blue hat working at muffins at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Paying for the credit
Paying
card?
for my credit card. And it was nice to have extra money while I was at school.
So when you graduate, what kind of jobs were you applying for?
I graduated in 92, which when you live in Calgary and you're from the West, there's always ups and downs.
Yeah.
And I've been through many of them in the past 32 years, and it was a down. So the only jobs that were really that I was looking at was like London Life Insurance, Canon Copiers, stuff that was really mundane. I didn't grow up with anybody kind of in the oil patch in my family, so it's not like I had any connections but basically in 92, I was lucky enough that my mom came to me and she had experienced some health issues and couldn't paint really anymore just due to the toxicity and the materials she was using. And she said, her studio was she had many different studios, but her last studio was in the old Dominion Bridge building, like, you know where Rosso is on 803 24th Avenue. It is, so her studio was in there and all her artist friends always said to her, this would make such a great gallery. It was a very small space, but it had a loft area. And she said to me, she's like, you know what, like, I can't do the painting anymore, but I think I would be a really good promoter of other artists' work. And she said, what do you think? We start super small and give it a few years and see where it goes. You know, she was only 92. She was born in 47. So she was 45 years old. Like she wasn't really willing to kind of give up on working. And I didn't have a lot of other opportunities. And my dad was not for it. He kind of didn't feel that he just paid for my education and that I should be doing this. So we kind of came up to a family agreement that I had to put out 10 resumes a week. However, my mom and I could do this. So it was great because she had, on the business level, I kind of knew I could put some of the things that I had just learned into place, which wasn't much. Like basically, I learned a lot about Japanese businesses and streamlining and just really large corporations and basic accounting and all that type of stuff. But she had the fundamentals of being an artist, so she knew the paperwork that was involved. I was able to create the paperwork. And she also had a lot of knowledge and friends in terms of the art industry and the artists from people that she admired and showed with throughout North America.
Interesting combination.
Yeah. So we kind of she had no computer skills. It was just the beginning. In 90, I was the only person of my roommates that actually got a computer. And it was the beginning of kind of when I was in McGill, we learned how to program on Lotus Notes. That's like pre-Excel and so basic spreadsheets. So I was able to automate kind of a few of her working documents,
Yep.
and we just kind of started. And we started super small. Never, ever dreamed 32 years later we would be where we are.
So that, like, family dynamics, there can be good and bad, and they can like ebb and flow and go wherever. That initial idea, why do you think your dad was hesitant?
Well, first of all, my mom and I did not have a great relationship growing up.
So when she
So like, we loved each other.
yeah.
But I think she was born in Czechoslovakia, being an immigrant child, she had all these expectations of her like first daughter. And so we always fought about like how I looked and what I wore and where I was going. And like, she always felt that there should be mystery. I didn't need to be everywhere. So, but on a business level, we were amazing. Like
Really?
we kind of were the yin and the yang. So, and we still fight. And that's like, I think, my husband, his mother's no longer alive, unfortunately, but he never yelled once at but he had a real leave it to beaver kind of upbringing. And I had more of like kind of I think when there's only 21 years between you and your mother and and she has that Eastern European, her parents were survivors of the Holocaust. Like it was just a very different way of growing up.
Yeah.
And so I think that we really, whatever we disagree on usually creates a better outcome than not disagreeing.
Yep.
And even to this day, like she still reads a lot of the emails and she offers opinion. If there's something major, like I have to preface it because she likes to talk before she really listens. I'm like, can you please listen? And if she listens, then I'll bounce like a few things off of her. So
the idea, when she approached you with this idea, was it a yes right away, or did you hesitate?
I really didn't have any choice. Like I wanted to work.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to work. I don't think I've ever slept a day in my life. Like I wanted to do something. So, and as I was sending out the resumes, and the world was a very different place. It wasn't like there was all these sites where you could put your name
Indeed,
in. And there was a little bit of recruiting at universities, but it was, unless you really had some relationships or some ins. And as I said, there was nothing in the oil patch, and Calgary was a very different place in the early 90s and a recessed economy. So yeah, that's.
Were you like cruising around, like physically dropping off resumes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it was a lot of work.
Yeah,
back then
it
to,
was
like,
a lot of
cruise
work,
around.
and there was no information.
Yeah.
So I think I think our generation is a lot more resourceful than the generations behind us, or in front of us, whichever way you want. Because I'll say to whether it's my son or an employee, do this or do that. And just because they've sent the email, they feel it's done. Well, really, it's not done. You need the answer to what I was asking, and then it's done. So I always laugh because people always say they have no idea how Calgary works.
Yep.
Well, because part of our business is work goes out on approval. So I'm really familiar with the city. And like I understand how crescents kind of come off of roads and avenues. And we used to go buy a map, and you would put like Woodfern Crescent, and you go to the back, and then you would find out where you are, and you would kind of and then luckily enough over the years there was MapQuest, and now Google does it all for you. So that's great. But I just feel learning those basic steps as part of the process really makes you think very differently. And then, there's this whole thing with the generation right now of immediate gratification, and things are just so easy.
Yep.
And
It's all accessible.
yeah, and it doesn't happen that. And I think we're finally seeing the pendulum go the other way, that people are realizing that you do need to put the effort in. And
so what that business look like early on? Like where was it? What was it? What did it
so
look
we were
like?
at 803 24th Avenue, Ramsey. Great building. I love the building. It was where we obviously started. We were open Wednesdays through Saturdays. So It was, and we had one designer in the city at one point come in and he was like, well, my people are going to come on this side of the tracks. Like, so it was a very different part. And at the time, I kind of said to my mom after like year 2 or 3, I said, if we're really going to do this, I want to do it right. And that's how we ended up looking for a piece of land, and we built a beautiful facility. And but I feel that starting so small and really grassroots and learning and is part of our success.
Yeah, just to kind of
I didn't walk into a beautiful building and wear Chanel suits and suddenly start. It was lots and lots of work.
How did you like the community that it takes to kind of get this thing off the ground? How does that happen?
Well, I think with my mom being the painter and being involved in the community, I think that I'll credit her with, I think, how that did start. And then obviously with our aesthetic and our kind of narrative of what we wanted to educate and promote and eventually sell. And as I said, I credit Calgary because Calgary's had there's been a great group of like-minded professionals that have gone through the system. And, we're all now in our mid-50s, but there's some amazing people that have come out of this region.
Explain what it is. Somebody listening might not fully understand what it is you kind of created back then. It's like the gallery idea. Like is it just what is it? Is it like a straight up gallery? Like explain what it actually is.
Well, basically it is a straight up gallery. There's a whole retail aspect of it, but we basically have these long-term relationships. And we have a group of artists, like 20 of them that we started with as very kind of, I'd call them, like kind of very early on in their careers. And we've now promoted them for so many years that they're definitely mid-career or even senior. And there's been the odd one that's passed away, which is even sadder. I don't mean to laugh about it. So we basically deal with the business end of their work.
Right.
We kind of work almost like agents, like in the music industry, because if the artists themselves are doing the job that they're supposed to do and it's their full-time job, they don't have time for the business side. And basically to create notoriety in your career, you do need to have the commercial and then the museum. And in the old days, there was a lot of like critical writing, but there's not as much of that anymore.
When did your dad kind of ease off, or when did the family agreement end of the
I think when I was able to basically support myself.
Right.
So.
And how quick was that? Does it take a couple of years to kind of get it going?
Yeah, and it did. It probably took a good 10 years. And it's not like we took a lot of money out of the company. So I was living pretty bare bones for the first 10 years.
Which is, I think I say 2 years and you're like, no, it's actually 10 years. Like, that's the kind of truth behind this stuff, right? It seems it takes a long time to.
Well, basically, we got to the point that we knew that we wanted to move somewhere because I credit a lot of the financial success to my mother because she has those old school values. So we had to save up for the piece of property and then save up for, so that's where the money, as we were making it, that's kind of where it was going. And then we were lucky enough, we worked with a young architect and he designed a beautiful facility for us. And it was built in 97.
Okay.
And since then, we've been kind of, but once you kind of have to pay off the facility, it's like you're always kind of working a little bit backwards. You take 2 steps backwards for 1 step forward. And, there's still that part of it. Like, who would have ever thought that I would have to be now dealing with an aging building? Like, I'm not a contractor. Like, what do I know about when Calgary gets one of its crazy storms and there's water coming through a window because it hit that one point at whatever degree. So there's a lot of responsibility in my life. Besides the art, there's the building, there's, I carry many hats.
Yeah. Do you, when you guys are figuring this out?
And I don't think there was that much, like the beauty of the timing, and there wasn't a lot of figuring it out. We were just doing it. And there was never an obstacle that was put forth in front of us that kind of said, there's a chance we might not. So I guess that was part. And there's lots of people out there that would say that we're married to rich men. We are not. My husband has never given me 1 cent for the business, and neither has my father. So it's just, we were able to, and we're very cautious.
Yeah.
And that's why I keep on going back to my mom, because in terms of business, probably it would have a very different story if it wasn't for her.
Do you think she just had that in her? Like,
I think being a first generation immigrant, I think that you were, whether, just the whole Eastern European, you have to own your land, you have to, and you save until you can afford to do the next kind of chapter.
Yeah.
So, and it's, it's great for me. And hopefully I've instilled that also in my son a bit.
When you decided to like build the new build, where's the new spot?
We're the not so new building, the 28-year-old building. We're on 11th Avenue.
11th and
between 6th and 7th.
Okay.
So we're right next to, do you know where Cookbook Company is?
Yep.
And so
Right
we're we're the freestanding building between, and the old Heavens was on the other side of us, and now it's an office building.
Keeps changing. When you make that move, like you go from this smaller operation to this big, beautiful thing, did it feel like you had it? Was there hesitation? Was there nerves? Was there like, the reason I'm asking you is because I'm about to do something like to have a space. And so I'm curious to,
I think I was just really proud. Like there's certain kind of points in your life that you reflect on and you have like the pride, or and you can only kind of learn from those types of things.
Yeah.
My mom is very much a should've, could've, would've, and I'm very much of let's learn and move forward. But I think to be successful, you have to take chances.
Yeah.
And it was a good chance.
Like a calculated chance? Like, do you think it was?
Well, it was a calculated chance because we only did what we could afford. Like,
Right,
of course
you had
I would
this.
have, of course I would have loved an elevator. Of course I would have loved different types of things.
Yeah.
But it wasn't part of our vernacular. Like there was going to be no elevator. There was going to be, we were lucky enough to have the architectural building that was built, like won an award, because at the time I think it was built like under $200 a square foot or something. So I think you do need to take chances to kind of, and whether they're calculated or not. The beauty of our business in some ways has been that even though I'm the business supposedly major, is a lot of it's not that calculated. I know, different people sit there with different spreadsheets, but there's a lot of gut, and there's a lot of, if you're willing to persevere.
Yeah.
It was a very different world also.
Yeah. Just like exposure and awareness back then, because it was.
Yeah, it was much simpler. And we were the two, it was very much in the art world, a male-dominated scene. And we were kind of the mother-daughter duo. And Helen, my mom, knew, she knew all of the players. But since then, there's been lots of change. So it's good.
You said something quickly, like trusting your gut and intuition. And have you figured that out recently, or when did you figure out that it was kind of important to be able to feel it, trust it, and move on it?
I think I've always been that. I think with my upbringing, and I like to always think like 2 steps ahead, and as I just said before. So I think that I think you have to listen to your gut, and you have to also, when you are analyzing something, look at all the different avenues. I've always been a little bit intuitive in terms of Sabrina, who's my assistant director, will always kind of say I have some crazy spidey senses.
Yep.
But
you just trust it, right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of have
if you know
that.
what kind of is happening, you can kind of look at some of the different outcomes, and then, it might be 2:00 in the morning and suddenly it springs in and you're like, yeah, that's what's happening.
It's I'm kind of similar. Like I'm not very like structured planning to make decisions. I can kind of, like to your point, you can kind of see things happening or like moving a certain way, and then you kind of make a decision based on those parameters. Sometimes it's kind of hard to trust it though, you know, because it's kind of vague, it's kind of gray.
It is, but what's the worst thing that could happen?
It's just the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And
then you could just pivot. We've all learned how to pivot in the past 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, fair. Do you, those like hard lessons, the ones that don't work, have you experienced a bunch of those, or is it?
I haven't experienced like the financial hard lessons, like because my business is based on relationships. Like I always joke that I have 25 marriages.
Right.
Is that like I just had a recent breakup, like probably after 25 years, and it was done by email on the other side. And at least I'm at the point in my career where I can kind of laugh about it because it's almost like what you would hear, like it would be in Friends or something. Like,
it's a TV
got
show.
the email.
Yeah.
And then, but if somebody doesn't respect me enough to kind of call and have a conversation about it, then their loss.
Yeah. Like working with that core group of people for so long, how does it, how does that work? And then also building like a brand and a community in Calgary. How does that kind of work together or play off each other?
Well, the brand and
like what I'm like wiggling towards is like, you know, you're working with a solid group of people for a lot of years,
and they're from all over, primarily Canadian, so that's nice.
Yep. But the Calgary, like, how do you get the word out in Calgary? Like, what was your move to kind of?
Well, for so long, like, there wasn't a contemporary institution. Like, there was no contemporary Calgary. The Glenbow was, the new Glenbow's going to be amazing, but it was quite stale for many years.
Yep.
We didn't really have. So basically, us as the dealers, we were doing the job of everybody. We didn't have the institutions that were helping us out. Like, you know, if you have a Mercedes-Benz, you don't have to, which is another luxury item, you don't have to do any of the promotion because all the promotion comes from somebody else. In the art world, it's very much the dealers that are trying to make the work relevant and special and why it's important. Like we believe in the work and we know the work is good. So then we have to kind of take it to the next level. And why would somebody actually want to acquire it?
What's your move? What's that move look like for you? Like over all these years, what was your approach?
Our approach since day one has been, in terms of, I think, part of our success in the community, is we have removed all the elitist barriers. So basically, a lot of the galleries that you go into, somebody at the desk looks up, they have no interest, and they don't say a word. There's no prices on the wall. There's no conversation. So we always have believed that everybody that walks in, you get a hello, how are you? Like, you know, there's a reason why somebody, when I talk to, and I'm training new employees to Newzones, there is a reason why they've opened up the door to walk in. We're not a high traffic like location. So, and then to create conversation. And if somebody has walked in, then to find out what they actually want to talk about. Like, and then, in designing the facility also, most of the times galleries aren't as large as ours, so it's just one solo show. So you can kind of do a head move, and if you don't like the work, you just leave. But our approach has always been, when you do walk into the gallery, 95% of the time, it's a group show. So it's positive on the side of the artists that their work gets shown more than just when they have their one show every 2 years. And then also, hopefully when somebody does come in, there is something that does appeal to them. So it's kind of twofold. So yeah, just removing the barriers and making it accessible. Like, that's why we're there, is we want to talk about it. We want to create a conversation. We want the community. And then we obviously, to stay open, want people to collect. And we make collecting as easy as possible. You know, if there's a young person and they can't afford $5,000, but they can afford 10 payments of $500, I'll do the deal. And if they live in the city, then they get to enjoy the work. And it's kind of... And that's why the art's being made, is on a creative level. And that's what the artist wants, is for people to see their work.
Over the years, like when it first opened, were you and your mom kind of like splitting the shift out front, like greeting the people that walk through the door and kind of moving them through the gallery?
It was a much smaller space, so it was easy. There's always tons of work to do because we're always in the art world, and in terms of the arts, you're always kind of understaffed, and and some days you can have one person, some days you can have 20, and you can't. There's no rhyme or reason whether we're in this location now or whether it was in Ramsey. So. You're just always working, and you just love when somebody comes in because then you get to talk to them.
Take a break from whatever you were doing to actually like exchange. Over all the years, does it take a while to like build up this? I don't know, like regulars almost like.
What kind of collectors that always come back?
Yeah.
I think so. On the side of the artist, as I talked about, it's the relationships. And then on the side of the collectors, it's the relationship also. Like we make, we just don't want to sell you a painting. We want to, we want you to understand why we believe in it. And we want to not that we want to become like fast friends, but we want you to know that we're in this for the long term. And we have been in it for the long term, and you're making a good decision.
Yeah. The arts in Calgary, you kind of touched on it, how it's changed over the years.
It's great. It's wonderful.
Wildly different.
Wildly different. Contemporary Calgary does an amazing job, and like they'll get to their openings like 400 or 500 people. So that means that there's 400 or 500 people that on a Thursday night, and granted it's usually free, actually care, which is such an amazing situation. Because for so many years in Calgary, there wasn't really anything it's nice, and it's nice. I think that all the different projects that have been done in terms of, we have some beautiful pieces out, like the sculpture projects. Like there's just interesting points. As I said earlier, walk a lot, so I love everything that's been done. Kind of on the Eau Claire pathways. Calgary's just getting better and better.
I've had a couple of muralists on the show. Alex Kwong, and Reese Douglas Farrell. And Alex did the mural in this parking lot here.
Okay. And Reese Douglas Farrell, he's a working contemporary artist also.
Yeah. So
one of my colleagues shows his work. He's
at
Herring Turkis, yeah.
Yeah. So it's for me, like I see for whatever the murals, I'm always attracted to the murals. Probably because they're just giant and they kind of catch you
larger
off guard.
Than life.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting story also, because Bump, we have 2 visible walls, and Bump's a Beltline Urban Mural Project. Very good, Tamar. I got the acronym. And they always approached us, and they said we would love to have one of our artists do a mural. And because our world is so slick and clean, and my mom, Helen, was always against it. And so finally, Sabrina and I, after 5 years, said to her, we're like, it's part of the community. It's not a conflict. And so we have a mural on one side of our building also. And we kind of wanted nothing to do with it. And it's the same thing. We have a scholarship at 20 years. Part of giving back was we created a scholarship. At that time, it was called ACAD, the University of Alberta Arts, and it's for a 4th-year painter who is, good at what they do, but not. We always like the underdog and gives back and and we have no involvement in that either. Just kind of an arm's throw.
Are you surprised where the art scene is now? Would you have hoped that it would have got to this point, or would you have hoped it would be in a different spot from when you first started all this?
Well, traveling and doing art fairs kind of all over the world, you would see sister, they always say we're to Denver and Dallas and all those communities that had very sophisticated kind of arts institutions. So it had to come.
Yep.
Like we were at a place that we really needed it. And it's super exciting to see where the new Glenbow, I was lucky enough through Paul Hardy.
Oh, cool.
He was
talking about that.
Yeah, to have a tour, like a hard hat tour. And you just get so excited, like when you actually get to see where that super interesting fact about that building is the reason why they decided to renovate versus kind of start from the beginning is the amount of concrete in that building, like to give it up and how sturdy it is. Like it would have cost like 5 times as much So, but they're doing an amazing job. It's going to be an incredible facility also.
When's it opening?
I think they're doing kind of like a rough in a year, but I think it's still like 3 years away.
Oh, it's that big.
Yeah.
I remember going to the Glenbow in like, I don't know, elementary, junior high or something.
The staircase in the brown in the middle with the weird lighting.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, I can't remember what the show was. I feel like it was, I don't know.
Well, they kind of had the same shows kind of for years and years. Like that's kind of, unfortunately, it was just always surviving by a thread. So, but it'll now kind of come back bigger and better and newer, and the facility looks amazing.
Do you have an idea of what the art scene looks like in Calgary going forward? Do you feel something? Do you see something? Do you know something? Like what happens?
I don't know anything.
Yeah.
No insider trading here. I think it'll just like I think with the rebranding of UA Arts and with the institutions and with there's some new good younger galleries that have real different focuses. I think we're just all together as a community, just making it that much stronger.
Yeah.
And I've been all over the world and I've done art fairs, and everybody does know Calgary because every European and anybody in North America on their bucket list is to go to Banff. And they'll be like, oh, I went to Banff and I did the Rocky Mountaineer tour. Like there's so many people that come to you and tell you that. So I think Calgary does have the opportunity of having great people visit and they do, just like how when I go to a city and I put contemporary art in, there's like-minded people out there and they want to see great things here also.
Yeah. Traveling around to those shows, do you still go? And what's the idea behind like? So
part of our focus has always been creating new markets for our Canadian artists and other places of the world. And that's kind of been a whole division, makes it sound very, very serious.
Yeah,
it's not.
Yeah, it sounds very legit.
So we have done fairs in Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Miami.
And you're popping up like you go.
There's major fairs all over the world, and we did quite a few for like we would do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 a year.
Wow, it's a big lift.
When my son was young, and then once we kind of had to pivot, and then Sabrina had kids also. We're kind of coming back. Last year we did 2. They're very, very difficult. Like, crates leave 2 months prior, and then you get there and you have to uncrate and you do a trade show, and people from all over the world come, like 30 or 40,000 in a matter of 3 days, and you're talking and you're promoting and hopefully you're selling because the booth is very expensive. And there's every single adrenaline moment happens at a fair. And I assume it's very similar to a lot of different types of trade shows where the product is very dear and near to your heart.
Yep.
So that's a big part of Newzones. So I think we're actually going to try and do 3 this year.
Wow.
We've taken on a new incredible woman named Taylor, and she's now going on 3 years with us. So we can, unfortunately, the 2 fairs we did last year are on the same day in 2025. So we're going to have to conquer and divide, and then we're going to probably add another fair. And we like to go to, for many years, we did New York and Miami, and those are not places we're going to anymore just because they have really great art all the time, and it's almost too much, like it's overload. Like I actually much prefer working a fair than going to a fair, because when you go to a fair, it's visual overload.
Yeah. Jody and I went to that the BMO Stampede exposition that was happening with all the artists. Even that, I thought that was overwhelming. Like just to
like during Stampede.
Yeah, and just to see all the different artists and different style of art, and it was a lot to digest. Which I can't imagine traveling to New York or Miami and walking around places. So that's a division, and with that also, because the world has become so much more sophisticated, and we have a huge online presence. All of that, and then people coming to visit Calgary, and then our collectors within Calgary, it all kind of, if all elements are working well, they all kind of mingle, which is nice. But I always joke because I'm like, suddenly there'll be 3 crates going out. So
our international business or is really strong. And then it feels like Calgary's so slow. And I'm just like, can all of these work together?
Just
If they all work together, this would be the perfect business.
No such thing.
Give me 1 month. All I want is 1 month.
Not greedy.
Yeah, no. 1 month where they all can work together and all of us work well together. And then.
It's this like utopia that might exist. Your partnership with your mom right now, over all these years, like I've heard different stories of family businesses and the ups and downs and whatever, but.
Well, my mom's in her late 70s and she's having a knee replacement tomorrow. So she's a little bit worried about other things.
Yep.
But as I said, she still reads all the emails. And if something's wrong with her email, she feels it like, she feels it's conspiracy theory and I don't want her looking. So she'll like call Sabrina up and the two of them like will be like, where are Helen's emails? But, she's very involved and actually it's interesting because at year 33, I am doing a little bit more analytical work and my dad's just retired from his day job. So I've kind of brought him in a little bit to understand more of, the numbers and the tax implications and especially if we have a new government moving forward. So there's the balancing of those types of things. As I said, like I have 1 degree. I have a little bit of experience, but I'm not a contractor. I'm not a tax specialist. Like it just feels when you're in small business, you have to wear all these crazy hats.
Yeah. Do you get a chance to talk to other small business owners or?
That's what I feel like Calgary's. Paul and I were lucky enough to spend a lot of time together. We only spend a lot of time together like at Christmas time because we both have houses in Palm Springs and we hike every morning together.
Right.
So we bounce lots of stuff off each other, which is so nice. And then a lot of my friends even though like one of my closest friend is a dentist, she still has the same kind of concerns and issues. So I can talk to her about different things. But the group that I've kind of grown up with and we're now kind of at the age we're at, I think we all kind of have, the next steps. There's a few that I have a girlfriend that just recently sold her business. Like if you're going to continue with the new government, and I don't want to get political, like how does that look and where are we going? And so, yeah, but I do bounce a lot of it. It's not necessarily the client. Like I'm always in a very different situation because, usually if you're selling a product, you just have to talk to the manufacturer and you get the product. I'm dealing with a creative end that just because I would like a 4x4 painting, they're not making one. So it's the balancing of, am I going to be getting work? Am I going to be able to place it on the business end of that? But then there's also the true business end of keeping the doors open and paying and max and
all the details.
Yeah.
You slipped it in there, 33 years.
Yeah.
When you opened up that first place, could you have ever?
Never.
Because
I really thought that one of those resumes would work.
And that was
at the beginning, like in the first few years. Yeah. And then you kind of get addicted to it, like especially in our business because it's the relationships with the artists, the relationships I'm lucky enough to have with some really incredible people on the arts level and then on the collecting.
Yep.
And then it's all like you have the next show. Like we plan 2 years in advance. Wow. So like sometimes people are like, well, are you thinking about the next 10? What's up? But I'm like, well, Sabrina has already planned the next 4 years of my life. So I guess
we're done.
I guess that's kind of what's happening. But yeah, no.
Like 33 years
it's a long time and it's a very long, there's not too many people when I think about it that do the exact same thing.
Right.
And that's why doing the fairs and just doing some different things make it a little bit more, first of all, it's more relevant. And second of all, you have to add new things into your daily kind of life. So for the next 20, we'll see kind of what happens. And, all industries change to a certain, somebody asked me recently what I thought about AI. And I had never really thought about AI, and I really still don't think about AI because I'm dealing with iniquity. I'm dealing with something that's created by somebody's hand on the whole. And I don't really know. The only thing that I feel probably AI is if for people that really don't care about culture and care about creativity, then, but they can still go to Winners right now if they just want to pick something up like that fills a spot and they don't really care where it's coming from.
Do you have another 20 years? Like, is this?
Yeah, I think I have another 20 years.
Yeah.
If I have the same amazing group around me that...
Which is a big part to like keep this thing going forward.
to keep it going.
Yeah.
I think I have... I don't really know any different also, which is
kind of
and
like,
it also, and sometimes when you do think about it, like I had a funny conversation with I have one young friend and he was like, and he's a member of Soho House in LA. And he said, well, they're looking for, you'd be perfect. They're looking for creatives. And then I went on and I was like, oh, maybe I'll treat myself to a Soho House membership. And they're like, their target age is 27 to 32. And so then I started to think about like the relevance of like me in the art world. And then on a huge level, it's my identity. Like I run into people and they'll be like, they have no idea who I am, but they're like, oh, you own Newzones. I'm like, I guess so, but my name's Tamar.
That's really interesting. That identity thing.
Yeah.
I had a speed skater on, like Gilmore Jr., and he talked about that when he retired. Himself and his sport were wrapped in, that was his identity. And when one left, when he retired, he's like now he's at the spot where he's kind of like, who am I?
Yeah, and I have thought about, my husband's actually 10 years older than me, and he's retiring this year. Well, actually, I think in March of 2025. So, there's lots of things that go through your head, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what do you plan on doing? Because I'm not, like, I still have it in me, and I still want to have my life in Calgary. And I always, Calgary's a great city because it's an international airport. You can get out quick and fast if there's not. I feel like I've been on every plane recently that doesn't want to go, but
bad luck.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Well, it went by very quickly, and I don't think I used any of my words in my notes.
Which is really funny because it's these kind of, like I have no script to follow, and there's no like I do zero research, so I have like nothing to really go from. So it's really interesting because I've had a few people come like with some things, and none of them have like done anything with anything because you just.
Well, I think you want to like make sure that you like when you're asked to do this, you want to make sure that you you stress the importance of the arts and the community and all the things that we kind of have talked about. But you don't want to sound like an idiot either.
No, but that's my job. My job is to help you through this so that nobody sounds like an idiot.
Yeah.
I'll just do that. And you were just starting to talk about it. So the last question I ask is, when I say Calgary, where's your head go?
Well, my head goes to big, beautiful skies and being close to the mountains and enjoying every single day. And obviously promoting, educating, and selling contemporary art for the next 30 years.
Do you, when you say that, like the art piece, do you have, or have you, again, I don't know anything, but like getting involved with the city at a certain level to kind of push it forward? Is that on your radar? Is that even possible? Or like, how does that actually...
It's very, when you're in small business, and this was probably a whole other episode, I think it's very committee based.
Yep.
And also very politically based.
Right.
And when you are in small business, you don't have a lot of time because you're wearing all these different hats to kind of, I have in the past year joined the Art Dealers Association of Canada's board. And it's based out of Toronto, but the city has very defined kind of rules when it comes to, which was nice in the past, like 2 years, was when you talked about the BMO building being part of that. There was a group of consultants that worked on that building and placing some of our they had a very defined, like it had to be Alberta and kind of south of this and north of that where the artist is from. But so there's been some great projects within, but on a political level with the city or the province, unless they come to us for help, it's pretty hard.
Yeah, it's a slow moving beast.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been meeting at Corinne's wedding is funny, and then putting it all together here and actually hearing like the story behind who you are and what you do is really cool. So
okay, well, thank you.
Thanks for your
It's been
time.
a pleasure.
Yeah.